Here we go. All right, this is Clint from the Doorway too. I'm talking to Jason, and I don't want to butcher the band's name, so tell me if I do this right or wrong. Is it Yanomamo?
Yanomamo.
All right, see, I was close. Good, I at least tried. So, good to meet you, Jason. I'm glad you could do this. I know it's crazy times and all. So,
oh, good man. Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Hey, absolutely. So, I am a huge Crusty Doom kind of sludge guy, man. So, like, your EP is just kicking ass to me. I'm just letting you know right now. Makes me smile every time I listen to it. So I kind of wanted to ask you a question. So the band was named after an Amazonian tribe. Is that what I'm kind of hearing?
Yeah. So when we first got the band together, so there's only two of us left in the original lineup, but the original four of us were heavily into sort of old horror movies and B-grade horror films and stuff like that. And we took the name from the film Cannibal Holocaust, which is like this gnarly mid-70s horror movie that was banned for years and years and years.
I know it well.
Yeah, and so our original singer was like, oh, I want to call it Yanomamo. And at the time, I didn't really give a shit about what we called the band. And I was just like, yeah, cool, from Cannibal Holocaust. So that totally makes sense. When Anthony left the band, we went through this whole process of wanting to change the name and starting fresh. And honestly, we just could not decide on a name. And this went on for like a month, and we were just like, fuck it, we'll just keep Yanomamo.
Nice. So do you think the name kind of fits now? It's kind of just what you are? Is it kind of just what the band is?
Yeah, it's kind of names of bands are a funny thing. Like, yeah, it's just something to call something, you know.
Gotcha. Cool, awesome. So listening to the new record, I kind of hear a lot of like the NOLA kind of vibe. I would say, there's a lot of I Hate God and Crowbar feelings to me with it. I'm also going to say there's a lot of that kind of UK sludgy with like Iron Monkey and stuff like that that I kind of, that I kind of hear a lot from. And then there's this band from Miami, Florida called Cavity that you guys remind me so much of. So I kind of wanted to just pick your brain and like what bands like made you do what you want to do.
So you saying Iron Monkey is awesome because Iron Monkey are like one of my favorite bands of all time. And seriously, we get we've throughout our whole career, we've always had the I Hate God comparison. And that's cool because I love I Hate God, massive fan. But for me, where I was coming from with this band was purely Iron Monkey. Like, from the first time I heard that band, they just knocked me on my ass. And I was like, my God, if I could, I want to be an Iron Monkey. Well, the whole, everything about, look, I don't give a shit about the new Iron Monkey because to me that's not Iron Monkey, but the original band that put out those first two albums, man, fuck, just it's everything to me, And I've had the opportunity to chat with Justin Greaves a few times online, and I've bought a bunch of old Iron Monkey tour merch off him and stuff. And he's just the super nicest, and he took the time to answer all the shitty questions I had about Iron Monkey back in the day, and it was just a super, super nice dude, So I'm like a massive Iron Monkey geek. So I bought a whole bunch of early flyers off him, and nice. A bunch of rare shit. And for me, those first two Iron Monkey records are just everything.
You can hear it. Like I said, you can totally hear it, especially in the guitar work. So, like I said, it's definitely it's a homage for sure. I'll tell you. Like I totally love it. Cool, very, very cool. So I know you've been around for quite a while. You've done mostly EPs. I know you've done one LP, but it's been mostly EPs. I kind of wanted to ask, do you feel like it's kind of better to just give a couple of tastes rather than a full record at times, especially with the way the world is now with their short attention spans and stuff?
Absolutely, that's a great question. When we first started, we were always like, we're just going to do EPs because we always felt that, given, and it's been nearly 10 years, which is crazy, but, you touched on it. You said the attention span of people these days, everything's really disposable. No one has that, ability to sit down or even the time, you can find whatever music you want online. So we were just like, let's just, particularly with this genre of music, some people can listen to it for hours, other people can take it in small doses. And we were just like, yep, we'll just do short, sharp bursts of stuff, release it, get it out there, and then move on to the next one. And I guess the only reason we really did that album was because people were saying to us, oh, please do a full album, please do a full album. So we're like, all right, we'll give it a crack. And I'm glad we did it. But after that, we kind of had a discussion in the band. We're just like, let's just go back to 4 tracks at a time. And then, we'll focus on some splits this year as well. We've got a couple of really cool splits coming up. One with Slowmatics from Ireland and the other with Sadhus from Greece, who we're both massive fans of those bands. And we've been trying to do a split with Sadhus now for probably 3 or 4 years, and the timing just hasn't worked. But fortunately, before the end of this year, we should have both those splits out and available. So we're pretty stoked about that.
Very cool. Yeah, Slowmatics are awesome. So that's cool. I can't wait to hear that. So
yeah.
So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the DIY vibe that you guys have. So it seems like you kind of do everything yourself. So is the Ionium Records, is that your own label, or is that?
Yeah, that's me. So and that came about because when we were doing so up until the album, we did everything was DIY, completely 100%. When we put the album out, a few of the smaller labels had a bit of a sniff around us. We had a bit of interest, and I just, I engaged with them, but I found the whole process to be, what's a good word for it? I just found it almost belittling in a way.
Okay.
Because I kind of felt like these labels were kind of, I don't know, they kind of, I felt like they wanted something out of us. They wanted us to kind of ask them nicely and kiss their ass a little bit. And I'm just like, you know what? I said to the rest of the guys in the band, this isn't me. This isn't what I do. Like, I'm not into kissing someone's ass so they'll do something for me. Like, someone either wants to do something or they don't. So I just said, fuck it. We're not going to do it. We're going to do it ourselves again. And I'm going to start this label just to put our shit out and see what happens. And the name was something that I just found on the internet somewhere. Apparently there were 2 new elements that someone discovered, and they wanted to call them Iomium, and the other one was Lemium. So I thought, fuck it, I'll just take Iomium Records. And I got a good mate of mine who's a graphic designer to do the moustache logo and stuff. And we just went from there. And I didn't really have any plans for it to do anything other than Yanomamo stuff. But this year, I'm going to start doing other Australian bands on kind of cool nichey things like cassettes and a bit of merch and maybe some CDs and stuff, just to get these bands out there. Because I think, in Australia, we're so geographically isolated. It's really hard for us to get traction,
Sure.
For us to drive to the next state from where I live in Sydney is 12 hours either way.
Wow. So
it's not like, you can, and I know in the States, sometimes if you drive for 12 hours, you can go through 3 or 4 states, right? So yeah, we've only got, we're so spread out. It's really, really hard. But hopefully I can use what little bit of success or notoriety that Yanomamo have to piggyback off and get some of our other great bands known. Because, we have quite a few underground bands come to Australia touring, which is fantastic. We've had everyone from I Hate God and High on Fire, and they all come back and we love it. We also have some of the lower level bands come out, and I've seen a few. I won't name any names, but I've gone to see these bands, and I'm just like, shit, man, these guys would be B-level here in Australia.
Wow.
Our bands shit all over some of these bands, and it's just, but they get to tour the world because, they're American or they're English or whatever. And, and I've been to a few gigs where our support bands just destroy these bands. It's just like, holy shit. So our scene here is really vibrant, and we have such great bands, but we just suffer from being at the bottom of the world.
That was going to be kind of the question next I was going to ask is, what kind of scene is there really in Sydney right now? Do you have much of a doom or sludgy scene at all? Or is it more just kind of metal across the board?
Yeah, it's interesting. So in the 70s, 80s, and 90s in Australia were kind of peak time for punk and metal and everything in between. All the extreme stuff. And then towards the end of the late 90s, the government got involved and started sort of gentrifying the inner city areas. And as a result, a lot of the old venues closed down. And in a way, it just destroyed the scene and I'm not just talking the doom and sludge scene, because that didn't really exist at that stage, but the punk and hard rock and metal scenes just pretty much closed down in Sydney. And if you go south 12 hours, there's a state called Victoria, and the capital of that is Melbourne. And Melbourne has a really vibrant scene across all genres of metal, and we'll play there more often than we'll play in Sydney. Having said that, I guess the scene in the last kind of 5 or 6 years, I think it's tended to regenerate a little bit. And again, it's still totally DIY. We've got a couple of really good promoters working who'll bring overseas bands out and promote local bands. But still, here in Sydney, we have a handful of venues, and that's really all there is. Where, as I said, back in the late 90s, there would have been, 40 or 50 venues operating. You could go to, starting at 6 p.m. at night, you'd finish at 3 a.m, you'd go and see 7 or 8 bands.
Sure.
And now that's just impossible now. If you can find 2 or 3 metal bands playing on a Saturday night in Sydney, then you're doing well.
Wow.
So, but that doesn't mean the scene doesn't exist and that people aren't putting in. There's still shitloads of great bands here, and we all sort of chip together and make it happen.
Nice. So this is the first record with a new singer as well, too, right?
Second. So Scotty was on our LP as well.
Okay.
So it's just a little bit buried in the mix on that one.
Well, that's okay. It sounded a little bit different. That's why I was asking.
Yeah.
So,
we made a point on this one. We were like, well, we weren't that happy with the overall finished sound on the album. And one of the things we wanted to rectify on the new EP was Scott's presence, because live, he's such a fucking beast and such a dominant force. If you think he sounds brutal on the album, when you see him live, like, he makes people shit their pants. Seriously. He's just, some of the best feedback we have is about Scott, because he's actually a big dude. He's like 6'4" and about 110 kilos as well. And, but away from the stage, he's one of the quietest dudes you'll ever come across. But as soon as he gets that microphone in his hand and opens his mouth, fuck, it's just game on. And, it's so brutal, it challenges the bass and the guitars and the drums. It's just like, it's monstrous.
Yeah, no,
he's actually he's in another band as well, which you should check out. And our drummer in Yanomamo plays guitar with Scott in this other band, and they're called Burial Pit.
Okay.
And the guy who recorded the new Yanomamo EP, Adrian Griffin, is the drummer in Burial Pit. And these guys are doing something along the vein of Primitive Man.
Oh, wow.
So I highly recommend anyone that likes that sort of stuff to check it out. And I think they got 2 or 3 songs at the moment on Spotify, but I know they're doing an album at the moment, and it's just savage. Like heavy, brutal, nothing fun happens sort of stuff.
Yeah, you said Primitive Man, so yeah, that's kind of just the most dissident, angry music on the earth. Oh yeah, so no, awesome. So that kind of brings me to my next question is, do you feel like, because you're an Australian band, that sometimes you don't get the notice or the notoriety that other bands do? Because from what I'm looking at right now, especially with the new EP, there's a lot of buzz. Like, I've seen a lot of nice press for you worldwide. Do you think maybe finally some of you guys down under are getting the recognition that you finally deserve?
Yeah, look, I think so. I think, when I think back, and it's been almost 10 years of doing this band, and we've been through a lot and played a lot of shows with a lot of great bands and traveled all over Australia. This was actually the first time that we backed up a release with some PR. So it got Curtis from Dewar PR involved. He's a really cool Canadian dude, and we got in touch with him via Matt Bacon. And I didn't really know what to expect from PR, but I knew I wanted this release. This release to me is one of the best things we've done, and I wanted people to hear it, so we invested some money in some PR, and it was a really great thing to do. And I think if we had have done it, I'm glad we didn't do it earlier, because I just don't think we were ready to have sort of PR behind us. People might think, does PR go against the DIY thing? I don't think so when you've been a band for nearly 10 years, and we're under no illusions. We know we're not going to make any money out of this, right? And that's never been the point. But the point is with doing PR is just to, after 10 years, I think, fuck, I want more people to hear this. And I think this is the release to do it on. So I think it was just a timing thing. And Curtis has done an amazing job. The guys in Slymatics put us onto Curtis. And I would recommend any underground metal band who has been around for a while. Like, I wouldn't do it on a first release because I think you've got to have some rubber on the road, so to speak. But any band that's been around for a while and has a few releases in the bag, I would highly recommend it. Because even when I spoke to a lot of people, they were like, oh yeah, we're familiar with you guys. So, having that rubber on the road really helps.
Sure.
And it's been really nice to see loads of different reviews and the hard work that Curtis put in for our EP paying off.
Yeah, he's definitely a good guy. I've known him for a long time, and he kind of got me in touch with you as well too. So, Matter of fact, I was just talking to him just now. He's asking me if everything was okay with the interviews.
Yeah.
He's a good guy for sure.
He really is. And heading into the whole PR thing, as I said, I had no idea what to expect, but Curtis has just blown me away with what he's given us.
Nice, yeah. So I run my own independent label. I have my own band and stuff too. So I completely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
New bands don't really always see the PR success. You need a little bit of name traction to be able to make sure that it works right. And you're absolutely right. DIY first, and then kind of grow from there. And I think that's really the great thing about your band is I knew about you even before this release.
Yeah.
And then when Curtis sent me the stuff, I was like, oh yeah, I've heard some of your stuff before.
Amazing.
It made me want to listen to it because when I know certain PR guys are doing it, I kind of have a better vibe with them than others, and it makes me want to check it out. So that kind of was the next thing I was going to talk about is live versus record. You kind of were touching it a little bit. How drastically different is the sound? Is it more brutal? Is it more complex? Like how would you say versus record?
I think this EP is the closest we've come to capturing our live sound. Live, I guess, as I touched on before, Scotty's vocals are a lot more present live than they were on the album that we put out, and we captured that on the new EP, which was fantastic. For a sort of a single guitar band, our sound is really, really big live. Lots of bottom end, lots of mids in the guitar as well to help it cut through. One thing that people always say to us is that we sound really thick and heavy live. It's nice. And that's what we aim for. We don't want a thin sound. We tune quite low as well. We're in B standard, which definitely helps. But yeah, both Clarence and I, the bass player, are kind of gear nerds, so we're right into amps and guitars and pedals, and I'm sitting in my studio now, and there's just shit everywhere.
I see orange amps behind you already.
Amps behind me, and and I guess the thing that contributes to our sound is like we like old gear, so we'll use vintage orange heads and all that sort of stuff, and we have specific sounds that we go for. We're doing it. It's just been announced today. We're doing a couple of live sets at an old theatre in the inner city here. They're going to be 2 1-hour sets on one night. So, I I don't think we've ever played a 1 hour set in our life. So we've been rehearsing like crazy. And we're actually they're going to record it at the desk, and we're going to put out a live set.
Oh, very cool.
So hopefully we can manage to capture that. So quite excited about that.
Very cool. So kind of building on that, the older material to now, if you could change anything on the older stuff, I'm always really curious from bands, like, is there one thing overall that the older recordings really bother you about? Like, is there something that you would love to change?
Yeah. The album, I would have put Scotty's vocals more prominent in the mix. The really old stuff I love because it was just, the first demo that we put out, the self-titled EP, it's just so raw and nasty, and my guitar playing is shithouse. And it just is what it is, and it just captured us at that moment in time where we were four guys that came together and really gelled, and the ideas that we spewed out, we captured really quickly. And I wouldn't change anything about that first release. Maybe my shitty guitar tone I would change a little bit, but even that, it's just a moment in time,
Yeah.
And I think everything we've ever put out, the production sounds different because we've been searching and learning along the way. And when we first went in, me particularly, I didn't know shit about recording anything. I was in one band before Yanomamo, and we did 2 EPs as well, and they were both recorded at the singer's home. So the first time I really went into a studio was with Yanomamo, and had no idea what I was doing. It's just like, stick a mic in front of the quad box and turn it on and play. How does it sound? I guess it sounds all right. Whatever.
Cool. No, and I just kind of always wonder, because bands are all different. So that's
absolutely. But having said that, we've never been the sort of band that goes in and spends, a whole day on putting the mic right in front of the quad box to capture the guitar. It's just like, come in, play a riff, listen to it back. Does it sound all right? Yeah, it sounds good. Or maybe tweak a little bit. But it's all really, really get in, get out sort of stuff. We don't fuck around with much for too long.
Well, it's got that dirty bluesy kind of tone. You kind of want to leave it. You want to leave it more raw and natural. So I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Because if you end up with something that sounds over processed, it defeats the whole purpose.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of the vibe I was feeling from it.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of reviews, and I kind of want to talk to you a little bit about it, like especially from like other labels that, like, you were talking about how maybe you felt like they were looking for things from you, but for instance, Sludge Lord like really loves your record. Like the review I read is like complete homage to you guys, which is really nice. Which is really nice to see. And then I was talking to a couple of guys with the Black Bow label, so out in the UK, and like the Conan guys, and they were like praising you as well too, saying like, saying like, that like your stuff was the next wave of the heavy sludgy kind of sound. Have you ever thought of maybe with your new label doing a partnership with something like that? Because those seem kind of like brother and sister labels that would fit really well with what you're doing.
Yeah, I have. I've actually hooked up with a band, with a label called Robust Fellow from the Ukraine.
Okay.
And we're going to do something together between him and me with Iomium in the next few months as well. But on the Black Bow stuff, so we toured Australia with Conan on their first tour when they first came out here in 2014. So we did like 8 shows around the country in 10 days or something. So, which included a couple of 2 shows in one day thing. And we just clicked straight away with John and Chris. Nice. Such great guys. And John was like, so I think we've got our digital stuff on their Black Bow Bandcamp. So John was keen to do that. But yeah, definitely moving forward with Iomium, definitely looking to collaborate with other labels, and Black Bow would be a great one to do it with. I mean, John and Conan have just done so well. They're one of the biggest bands in the underground now, and have been for years. And to have the opportunity to tour with them in 2014 and watch them every night and go on before them was just such an honor, and you learn so much from guys when you do that sort of stuff with them.
Cool. So if you were to have somebody for the first time, they've never heard your music at all in any way, shape, or form, how would you describe the band to someone that's about to hear it for the very first time?
Yeah, it's a good question because I have a lot of questions from people that I meet around. Oh, so I hear you play in a band, Oh, what's it like? And so I have to describe it to them. And I know, look, if people are into it and they know where we're coming from, then it's easy. I can just say, we're kind of sludgy, heavy, doomy stuff, and they get it. But I've got for people who aren't familiar, I'm just like, I usually start off with something like, oh, it's not for everyone.
Nice.
And then that usually just, oh, is it really heavy like Metallica or something? Which always just makes me laugh. I'm just like, another one I like to use is something Matt Pike said once was like, it's like metal but not.
Nice.
I'll just say, it's often say, do you know Black Sabbath? Oh, yeah, I know Black Sabbath. Or it's like them on steroids with someone screaming at you. So, and that usually just makes people go, oh, okay.
Gotcha. No, cool. So talking about the digital age a little bit, both you and I are not kids, so we've been around the block a bit. I'm 48. I'm 48 myself, so like I'm just saying.
So yeah.
Kind of like we're right in the same world. Do you feel? And I know sometimes this could be a negative connotation, but it doesn't mean to be said this like in a negative way. But do you feel that with this new Bandcamp and digital age that any bedroom band can kind of get out there now, so it kind of floods the market a little bit more than it used to be? Or do you feel like the bands still really, the ones that deserve it, get the views, where the other ones, they may have a moment in the sun but disappear pretty quick?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the whole digital age is a double-edged sword. I think it's great that anyone can put together a band and record and get their stuff out there. I think the downside of it is that there is a lot of stuff out there that you just kind of go, I know that when Doom and Sludge kind of took off, it's been around for a long time now. Iron Monkey was in the 90s and I Hate God started in the early 90s. So it's been around for a long time, 30 plus years. But when it started to get popular, as popular as it can get, in Sydney in particular, a lot of guys, all of a sudden these bands popped up and they were Doom bands or they were Sludge bands. And they were made up by guys who had a background in thrash metal or some other form of metal. And they were just like, shit, we need to form a Doom band. And they formed these bands and some of them were okay and some of them completely missed the mark. Mm-hmm. And I just got the overwhelming feeling it was like bandwagon jumping.
Yeah.
And the results smelled like bandwagon jumping.
like same thing happened here.
Yeah. And look, those bands came and they went really quickly because people incorrectly have the assumption that playing slow is easy. Yeah. Fuck, I can tell you it's the complete opposite. Playing slow is really fucking hard. Try and find a drummer that can play slow without speeding up. Particularly in a live situation where the adrenaline's flowing and, all that sort of stuff. So, if you think playing slow is easy, fuck, give it a try.
Took me 17 years to find a drummer to work with to play slow. I completely understand.
You see the good bands. For me, I'm a massive fan of Dylan Carlson and Earth.
Yep.
And Adrienne, the drummer in that band, is one of the most phenomenal drummers I've ever seen in my life. And the way she controls her body to play so slow is incredible, And when I think of great slow drummers in the modern age, I think of her because I saw them live here we have this festival called Dark Mofo in Tasmania, which is a little island on the bottom of Australia. and they played there one year with Sun.
Nice.
And so Sun bought out their entire backline as well from Europe. So they had all the Model Ts, and Earth played first, and I was always been a big fan of Earth, but I'd never seen them live. And when they started, I could not take my eyes off Adrienne, the drummer, because she was the backbone of the band, and playing at like 30, 25 beats a minute. You know, just like, my God, this woman is amazing. Yeah. So I don't know, I probably digressed a little bit there, but I think, and it probably happens in other scenes as well, where guys sort of jump in and jump out. But I think at the end of the day, you know, as I said, we've been around for nearly 10 years and we've seen a lot of bands come and go. And there's a handful that make it past the 2-3 year mark.
No, completely understand. So the last thing I was going to talk is about some kind of legendary bands from your country that I kind of like wanted to see what your feelings and feedback were on.
Yeah.
I kind of want to talk about Disembowelment for a minute, if I can.
Oh yeah.
All right. So I know they've kind of over the years changed, and now they have another band name, and they're kind of still doing similar things that I really wouldn't call Disembowelment, but people are calling it Disembowelment-esque. Yeah. And then there's another band called Halo that I really, really loved from Australia. I just like, were these bands that kind of paved the way for what you're doing? Were you interested in them, early on, or was it just because the country's so massive and so spread apart by a giant desert? Like, did it not even matter? Like, were they just bands that weren't anything big down there, but they maybe just had a moment where I was, or something like that? So,
yeah, I think those two bands you mentioned, while being very well aware of them and what they did, they didn't impact me so much. For me, it was more bands like Clag. I'm not sure if you're aware of Clag from Melbourne.
No.
I would highly recommend checking out Clag. So they were another band very influenced by Iron Monkey, but just did the sludge doom thing really fucking well. Really well. And they've got 2 or 3 albums that they did. Unfortunately, the founder of the band and one of their guitarists has moved to the US now. So they're kind of on an indefinite hiatus. But every time he comes back, they'll play a couple of shows, which is really cool.
Nice.
And we're really fortunate to play in it when Yanomamo was in its infancy. We played with them a bit, and we became really good friends with those guys. And so I guess for us, the ones that really stand out for us are the ones who took us under their wing when we first started, and asked us to go down to Melbourne and play some shows with them. Such great bands. There's a little state in between New South Wales and Victoria called Canberra, or the ACT, and there's some of our best doom sludge bands come from there. So there's a band called Pod People.
Okay.
Who have been around for 25 years, and they supported Electric Wizard when they came out here in the 90s, and they supported Cathedral and a bunch of other bands. And, because it's such a small scene, we've become such good friends with these guys and these bands. And Pod People took a break for I think it was nearly 8 or 9 years, and now they're back again. So, bands like Lucifungus, which again are from Canberra, but feature 2 members. They're a 2-piece on Black Farm Records, and that's got 2 members of Pod People in them.
Okay.
Just so many bands that have come and gone. And there's a handful left, but I guess given how small our scene and how isolated our country is, you just come to know these bands, and when you play with them, you get to know them, and you don't always become friends, but you're very aware of what's going on within your scene.
Sure. Cool. So I'll kind of start wrapping it up now.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to ask you, do you do music outside of Yanomamo?
Yeah, I've got a little thing that I've been jamming on now with a bunch of guys, and there's been a few things throughout the years, but bands are tough, man, as you know. And look, I think with Yanomamo, we were just, and at first I didn't, probably for the first 5 or 6 years that we were a band, I didn't realize how lucky we were to have 4 guys that get along really well, that don't argue, that are, you know, if someone says, no, that's not cool, everyone just goes, okay. No one, you know, no one is an asshole. You know, and I was in a band called Lamera before Yanomamo, and that was really good. And then it all got really ugly and fell apart. And then I've tried to do a couple of other things in the background with Yanomamo, and it's just becomes a thing where you get together and have a jam and write a couple of songs and everyone's keen, and then someone goes, oh, I can't do it anymore. And it just kind of crumbles and falls away. So you get a little bit disheartened from that, and you're like, oh, fuck it, I'll just stick with my main band. And then, you know, people go, oh, you want to jam? And so, yeah, I'm always jamming and doing other stuff. But my main thing is Yanomamo. You know, I put 10 years of my life into it, and that's always going to come first. I'm always keen to do new things, but if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Sure. And then as far as with the new EP, have you thought about maybe doing like maybe a video release for it or anything along those lines, just to try and get, especially with the way YouTube is in the world now, trying to get a little more hype for the band that way? I agree with you that this scene is not ever going to make you rich or famous, but you know, a lot of people, they everything comes from YouTube for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been working on a little music video that I'm pulling together, which should be ready in a week or so. So that'll definitely go on YouTube, and that's going to just be for the title track, No Sympathy for a Rat. As a band, we have discussed maybe doing a video. We just need to find the right person. But I think our focus for probably for the rest of the year, given how weird the year is, will be getting getting these 2 1-hour sets done in September. And then looking at, I think the next thing for us will be those 2 splits, but also trying to get No Sympathy for a Rat out on vinyl, whether that's, again, we've had some interest from some labels. Again, I won't kiss their ass, and if they piss me off, I'll just do it myself. So we'll see what happens.
Awesome.
So if we do it, it'll be a 10-inch, which is kind of cool, because it's 4 songs and that'll fit. So kind of like cool shit like that.
Very cool. The last thing I'd say is, what would you like to say to your fans or the people that are going to see this video for the first time? I'm going to give you your 5 minutes to be able, or 2 minutes or whatever to talk to them.
Yeah, look, the thing for us as a band is, you know, we're just so appreciative, and me personally are appreciative of anyone that takes the time to come and see us or spend their hard-earned money on what we put out. And it's still, you know, after nearly 10 years, it still blows me away when I go to the post office with carrying a huge armful of packages that I'm sending to, you know, whether it's within Australia or to the US or the UK or to Israel or Slovenia or these crazy places. And it's just so humbling that people from all over the world, you know, granted not in huge quantities, but still someone in Israel listens to something that we create and goes, fuck, I'll spend my hard-earned money on that. That is so humbling, you know, and we're just mega appreciative that we've been able to do this for almost 10 years. You know, you start out in a small band that plays kind of obnoxious music and you just hope for the best.
Absolutely. No, again, Jason, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it. Good luck with all the new stuff going on, and I'll make sure that I keep listening as well too and keep supporting you. So
amazing. Thanks for your time, Clint. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. You have a great one.
Cheers, dude.